I've seen this myself. Happens a little differently today. God said, Abram, I need 5 animals. Now the next part, if you ever want to share this with somebody, you need to hear this clearly, because otherwise you can't make this connection. Bring me 5 animals, a heifer, a goat, a ram, a dove, and a pigeon. Now I don't know how long it took him to catch all those things. But Abram's out, this old man, scouting them out. But notice what happens next. Abram brought these, and he knew what to do with them. God didn't tell him to cut them or to kill them. How did Abraham know that? What God asked, Abram understood, is something common in the culture. Abram knew what to do. He'd seen it before. He knows exactly what God is going to do. So God said, take these animals, divide half a sheep, half a sheep. I don't know if you've ever slaughtered an animal, but you got a bloody mess. Half a goat, half a goat, half a cow, half a cow. That alone is a barrel of blood. And you let that blood run down into a depression between the animals. Still do it today. I've seen it myself. You let the blood run down between the animals. Let me tell you a story. I lived with a Bedouin family. The last weekend that I was there, they always would sit at night around the fire and tell stories, which I didn't understand a word of, but I always laughed when they laughed and looked serious when they looked serious. They thought I was the strangest thing that had ever fallen out of the sky, honestly. But I was welcomed. So this day I noticed something different. They had been cleaning what cleaning they could do, all these tents all day long. Their clothes, they put on finer clothes, not that they had a lot. I knew something was happening. And as they sat around the fire that afternoon, in the distance I saw a cloud of dust and another group of people. Turned out to be another Bedouin family from maybe 15, 20 miles, I'm guessing, I don't know for sure. And they were related. They're all third, fourth cousins. And they sat together around the fire. And then as evening wore on, they had eaten broken bread together. As they sat around the fire, I could tell that something was happening. It got much quieter. And the two sheikhs, sheikh you say in Arabic, the two patriarchs, sat together and were talking, rather intensely. And everybody's listening, which is very un-Arabic. Because in Arabic, Arab culture and Jewish culture, everybody talks at once. Here they're listening. And then I noticed that next to the visiting family was a young girl. From my point of view, she was veiled, so she had menstruated. She looked, I would have guessed 12, 13. And next to the family I was with was a young man, maybe 20, 25. And I gathered that what was going on there was an engagement. They talked for quite a while. And then the old man, the girls, I think it was her father, may have been her grandfather, he got up and he came back dragging a goat. Dragging this goat. Goat knew what was coming too, I think. He was in the culture too. Took that goat, cut its throat, and the blood ran and formed a puddle about 2 feet in diameter, just in the stone. I hadn't even noticed the depression there. And then, first the greater party in their culture, the young man's dad, stepped up, took off his sandals, looked over at his son. I remember him looking up, and he stepped in the blood like this. And I mean, it was deathly silent. I could see the blood running down his legs. I could see it splash on his white robe. I could see it splash on the robes of the people that were sitting near. And then the young woman's, I think, grandfather stepped up, looked at his daughter, granddaughter, whatever. I don't remember if he looked up, but he took off his sandals, and he stepped in. Now later, I would learn that that's called a self-maledictory oath or covenant. The idea is, you make a promise. I will give you land, descendants, a Messiah. You be perfect. And if I break my word, if this young man isn't hardworking and honest and provides for your daughter a good family, you may do this to me. And if that kid turned out to be abusive, lazy, a thief, you'd find his dad's body in the bottom of a wadi with his throat cut, and there'd be sandal prints in his blood. Tell me that wouldn't change American Western culture marriage. If when you married, and then the young girl's dad. If the young girl that I'm giving your son to marry isn't a virgin, if she isn't honest, if she isn't hardworking, whatever he promised, I don't know, you may do this to me. Now, what blew me away at that moment is it dawned on me that when God came down to tell Abraham about this new way, he's walked right into the culture. And God said, Abraham, I'll tell you what, I will give you land, descendants, and one of them will be the Messiah. And if I don't keep my word, you may do this to me. Now, I don't know how you even think that, but imagine what God is saying. I love you so much, I'll walk barefooted in animal blood just to show you that I will at all costs I'll stake my life on my promise. Now, you're Abraham. What are you thinking? The text says, a thick and dreadful darkness fell over Abram. That's a Hebrew colloquialism, which means to be scared out of your mind. Because Abram knew that if he put his little toe in the blood, he was a dead man. He couldn't be perfect. If he was dead, no descendants. If no descendants, no Messiah. And there the old man stood, shaking. Two symbols appear. The first one is a smoking fire pot. In that culture, at the evening, they would put coals in the pot and cover it so that in the morning the woman could dump the coals and start the fire for the day. In fact, Proverbs 31 says a godly woman is a woman whose fire never goes out. Heard some interesting sermons on that passage, which I'm not sure caught exactly the cultural meaning, but they were good sermons nevertheless. Now, we know this symbol is God because it's first, and the greater party always walks in the blood first. Think of examples in the Bible. That pot would then smoke like that from those coals smoldering. So it's really a smoke symbol. Show me in the Bible that smoke is used as a symbol, a picture of God. Give me an example. Children of Israel led by the pillar of smoke. We say cloud, but it's the word for smoke. Another one. Temple fills with smoke. Very good. Mount Sinai is covered with smoke. So God comes down and says, Abraham, I promise you. Now it's Abram's turn. And we get a second symbol. It's a torch. But in the Bible, fire, in every single case where it's used as a picture, is a symbol of God. Give me an example. Tongues of fire on Pentecost. Burning bush, pillar of fire, fire on Mount Sinai, fire in the temple. Now I want you to picture something. Abraham walked up to the blood. I'm dramatizing, but Abraham walked up to the blood. Took off his sandals. He knew that if he stepped 1 foot into that blood, he was a dead man. And from a human point of view, the whole plan of, we call it salvation, was gone. And as he stepped his foot, maybe shaking with fear and anguish and grief, God put his hand in Abraham's chest and said, step aside, my friend. And God came a second time. Abraham, if you ever break your word to be perfect, if you or your descendants ever sin, you may do this to me. And at that instant, God sentenced Jesus Christ to death. In picture, in a desert picture, I see Jesus sitting in heaven, watching his dad sentence him to die. Because from that moment on, they knew that the sin of those who were in Abraham would be paid for, not by Abraham's blood, but by God's blood. Now, what kind of a God will come down from heaven, walk barefooted in the blood, and said, not only will I do what I promised, but I'll pay the price where you fail?